The world didn't see it coming. No one did. When Xiao Zhan stood under the glow of a single spotlight, holding a microphone that shimmered like the last drop of starlight in a midnight sky, and the music began, soft, trembling, sincere, no one expected the person walking from the shadows toward him to be Wang Yibo. It wasn't just a performance. It was a revelation. The audience didn't breathe for several seconds. Cameras flashed, fans screamed, but the stage seemed to exist in a world of its own, where time froze and only their voices mattered. A Song for You wasn't just a melody. It was a story that had been waiting to be told. Xiao Zhan began with a quiet hum. His voice was low, almost fragile, as if carrying years of untold words. The lyrics spoke of distance and destiny, of promises made in silence, and of a friendship, or something deeper, that had survived storms unseen by the world. Then came the moment that silenced even the loudest cheers. Wang Yibo's voice slipped into the song like the wind after a long rain, steady, mysterious, and full of emotion. Their eyes met, and for a second everything else vanished. Wang Yibo smiled faintly, that familiar, elusive curve of his lips that seemed to say everything without saying a word. Xiao Zhan looked back, 1,000 unspoken memories flashing in his gaze. Of laughter on set, long nights of practice, shared glances, and the unbreakable connection that fame, distance, or time could never erase. The crowd erupted, but the two on stage didn't move. They just sang. Two voices blending so perfectly that it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. The song wasn't originally planned as a duet. Xiao Zhan had written it in private, during one of the most challenging periods of his life. It was meant as a letter, a confession wrapped in melody, an unspoken message to someone who once stood by him when the world felt too heavy. The title, A Song for You, had been his quiet way of saying what words never could. But no one knew that Wang Yibo had already heard it, months before the world did. It happened one rainy evening, in a small studio tucked away from the noise of fame. Xiao Zhan was recording a demo when the door opened unexpectedly. Wang Yibo stepped in, soaked from the downpour, his helmet in hand, eyes locked on Xiao Zhan. Neither spoke. For a long moment, only the soft hum of the guitar filled the space. "You wrote that?" Yibo finally asked, his tone quiet, unreadable. Xiao Zhan nodded. "Yeah. For someone." Yibo's eyes softened, and a small smile tugged at his lips. "Then maybe we should finish it together." And that's how A Song for You was born, not from industry plans or record labels, but from something pure, fragile, and real. It became their unspoken reunion, a bridge between the silence that had stretched too long and the understanding that had never really faded. During rehearsals, those who watched them said there was something magnetic in the air. They didn't talk much, but every glance, every note, every subtle smile carried the weight of 1,000 memories. Xiao Zhan often adjusted the melody, while Wang Yibo silently followed. His movements calm, deliberate, almost poetic. It wasn't just a song, they were communicating through music, stitching together the moments they'd lost. On stage, that connection reached its peak. The bridge of the song, where the tempo slows and the words turn hauntingly emotional, was where the real magic happened. The lyrics whispered, "If I could sing you my heart, would you hear the truth beneath the noise? If I could stand before you once more, would you still choose to stay?" Xiao Zhan's voice cracked slightly, not from lack of control, but from too much emotion. Yibo, standing just a step behind him, took over the next line seamlessly. "I was always here, waiting in the quiet rain, listening for your song to find me again." The audience gasped, some cried. And when the final note faded, Xiao Zhan turned slightly, his eyes glistening, not from stage lights but from something deeper. Wang Yibo's gaze met his, and for the briefest second, they both smiled, an unspoken acknowledgement of everything they'd endured, everything they'd overcome, and everything that still connected them. When the performance ended, there was silence. Pure, stunned silence. Then the applause came, roaring like thunder, shaking the arena. People stood, clapping, crying, cheering. But Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo simply bowed together, side by side, their shoulders brushing slightly, A quiet, perfect gesture that said more than words ever could. Later, in the behind-the-scenes footage that fans devoured online, there was a moment caught by accident. Xiao Zhan was seen laughing softly as Yibo handed him a water bottle. "You almost made me cry on stage," Xiao Zhan joked, half smiling. "Almost," Yibo replied, his tone teasing. "You did." That clip went viral instantly, melting millions of hearts. The internet exploded with theories, edits, and emotional comments. But beyond all the noise, one truth stood tall. This wasn't just a song. It was a story, a piece of their shared soul. The music video for A Song for You carried the same emotional depth. It opened with Xiao Zhan sitting alone by a piano, the room dimly lit by morning light. The camera lingered on his hands, trembling slightly as he played the first notes. Then the door opened. Yibo walked in, carrying his guitar. His expression calm but filled with warmth. No dialogue, no special effects. Just two artists reconnecting through music. The video's most iconic scene shows them performing in an empty theater. Dust floating through the light beams, the seats vacant, the world silent. Xiao Zhan's eyes are closed as he sings, while Yibo watches him from across the stage. Then, halfway through, he walks over and begins to play beside him. The camera slowly circles them, their music filling the hollow space until it feels like the entire world is listening. By the end, the camera zooms out, showing the empty seats, except for one. In that single seat, a small paper note lies folded. On it, written in delicate handwriting, are the words, "For you, always." Fans called it the scene that broke a million hearts. But more than that, it became a symbol of reunion, trust, and the beauty of connection that defies time. Xiao Zhan later admitted in an interview that A Song for You was deeply personal. "It's about expressing gratitude," he said softly. "About finding the courage to speak through music when words fall short." When asked about performing it with Wang Yibo, he smiled. Genuine, gentle, full of quiet pride. "It just felt right," he said. Wang Yibo, on the other hand, kept his response simple but powerful. "It's his song," he said. "I just wanted to make sure the world heard it the way it deserved to be heard." Behind the simplicity of his words lay layers of meaning. Fans knew. They always did. To this day, A Song for You remains one of the most iconic performances in their shared history. An emotional masterpiece that transcended the boundaries of fandoms, rumors, and time. It became a melody of healing, hope, and heartfelt truth. Some songs entertain. Others tell stories. But only a few, like this one, live forever in the hearts of those who listen. The performance might have ended, but the echo of their voices refused to fade. A Song for You wasn't just another stage act. It became a living moment, suspended in the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. Yet, what happened after that breathtaking duet was something no one could have scripted. Backstage, the energy was thick, electric, charged yet fragile. Crew members whispered excitedly, staff scrambled to manage the flood of cameras, and fans outside chanted their names in unison. But amid all that chaos, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo were silent. They stood a few feet apart in the dim corridor behind the stage. The sound of applause still echoed faintly from beyond the curtain. Xiao Zhan's hands were still trembling slightly, his knuckles white from holding the mic too tightly. Ba noticed. He walked closer, his expression unreadable, though his eyes held that familiar warmth that only Xiao Zhan could ever truly understand. "You did great," Yibo said simply, his voice low, steady. Xiao Zhan chuckled softly, his laughter colored by exhaustion and relief. "You mean we did great?" Yibo tilted his head slightly, that trademark smirk flickering at the corner of his lips. "Yeah," he said. "We always do." Their eyes met for a moment, just a heartbeat, but it was enough. The kind of look that carried years of memories. The laughter, the late-night rehearsals, the inside jokes that no one else got. It wasn't nostalgia. It was connection, alive and burning quietly between them. Then, as if to break the intensity of that moment, Xiao Zhan asked teasingly, "You came in a beat late on the second chorus, didn't you?" Yibo gave him a look, half amusement, half mock offense. "I call it dramatic timing," he replied, turning away to grab his jacket. Xiao Zhan laughed again, shaking his head. "You never change." "Neither do you," Yibo said softly, almost under his breath. It wasn't just the performance that had everyone talking. It was them. The chemistry, the unspoken synchronization, the way one seemed to anticipate the other's every move. Even the lighting seemed to follow their rhythm, as if the universe itself had conspired to let that moment exist exactly the way it did. When the behind-the-scenes clip surfaced days later, fans noticed something subtle in one particular shot. After their final bow, when the lights dimmed and the crowd's cheers began to fade, Yibo reached out, barely visible in the shadows, and gave Xiao Zhan's hand a light squeeze. Just for a second. But that second was enough to set the internet ablaze. Some said it was encouragement. Others said it was gratitude. But those who understood their story knew. It was both. Later that night, Xiao Zhan couldn't sleep. The melody of the song replayed endlessly in his mind. He sat by his window, city lights flickering outside, his guitar leaning against the chair beside him. He picked it up and began to strum softly, almost absent-mindedly. The notes of a song for you flowed once again, but slower this time, tender, reflective. His phone buzzed. Message from Yibo. "Still awake?" Xiao Zhan smiled faintly. "Yeah. Can't stop thinking about the performance." Was. Then another message appeared. It felt real. Xiao Zhan's fingers hesitated on the strings. He knew exactly what Yibo meant. It was real. Every lyric, every glance, every moment they shared on that stage. It wasn't acting. It was honesty woven through melody. He replied simply, "It always is." The next morning, the song dominated the charts. Every social media platform was flooded with clips of their duet, fan edits, and reactions from across the world. Headlines read, "Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo's reunion performance brings the world to tears." But fame wasn't what made that night unforgettable. It was what it meant. In an exclusive interview released a week later, the host asked Xiao Zhan what inspired the song. He smiled, looking thoughtful. "It's a message," he said slowly. "For someone who believed in me when things were hard. A reminder that sometimes, the best way to speak your heart is to sing it." The host nodded. "And performing it with Wang Yibo, what was that like?" For a second, Xiao Zhan didn't answer. His eyes softened, a small, genuine smile playing on his lips. "Comforting," he finally said. "It felt like coming home." Meanwhile, Wang Yibo gave his own interview. His words were few, but they carried weight. "I didn't plan it," he said about joining Xiao Zhan on stage. "I just knew it was time." That was Yibo. Direct, quiet, but deeply meaningful. Fans who had followed them since their early days knew how rare that moment truly was. Two stars who had walked separate paths, now standing together again. Not because the industry demanded it, but because the music did. Weeks later, the official music video dropped, and the world fell in love all over again. The final scene was the one that broke everyone's hearts. Xiao Zhan sitting on a piano bench in an empty hall, playing the final note as Wang Yibo quietly walked up behind him, placing a single folded sheet of paper on the piano. When Xiao Zhan unfolded it, the camera zoomed in on the message. "Your song reached me." The screen faded to black. It was simple but powerful. A full-circle ending to a story that wasn't just about two artists, but about faith, forgiveness, and friendship reborn through music. And yet, even that ending didn't feel like the end. A few nights after the video release, Xiao Zhan attended a private concert event. The crowd was smaller, more intimate. Halfway through, someone from the audience shouted, "Sing a song for you." Xiao Zhan smiled shyly, looked up at the stage lights and said, "All right. But this time, it's just me." He began to sing softly. The hall was quiet enough to hear his every breath. But halfway through the chorus, as if drawn by fate, a familiar voice joined in from backstage. Wang Yibo's. The audience gasped in disbelief as he walked onto the stage, microphone in hand, the same calm fire in his eyes. Xiao Zhan turned, surprise flashing across his face, followed by that bright, radiant smile that fans adored. And then once again they sang together. No lights, no choreography. Just two voices, two souls, and one unforgettable song. As the last note faded into the night, Xiao Zhan whispered, barely audible through the mic. "For you." Boss smiled. "Always." The crowd roared. That night became legend. A song for you wasn't just a melody anymore. It was an emotion, a symbol of how art can mend what time tries to separate. It reminded everyone that even when silence stretches for years, the right song can still bring hearts back together. And as that final chord lingered, it felt like the universe itself was listening. If this story touched your heart the way a song for you touched theirs, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more breathtaking stories about Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo. Your support keeps their story alive and brings more magical moments to life. Crescent moon microphone sparkling heart.